The Toxteth riots of July 1981 were a civil disturbance in Toxteth, inner city Liverpool, which arose in part from long-standing tensions between the local police and the black community. They followed the Brixton riots earlier that year. Background: the Merseyside police force had, at the time, a poor reputation within the black community for stopping and searching young black men in the area, under the sus laws, and the perceived heavy-handed arrest of Leroy Alphonse Cooper on Friday, 3 July, watched by an angry crowd, led to a disturbance in which 3 policemen were injured. The existing tensions between police and people had already been noticed by local magistrate, councillor and chair of the Merseyside Police Committee, Margaret Simey, who was frequently critical of the hardline tactics used by the then Chief Constable Kenneth Oxford. She said of the rioters, they would be apathetic fools if they didn't protest, although she was unprepared for the personal criticism that followed. With the economy in recession, unemployment in Britain was at a 50-year high in 1981, and Toxteth had one of the highest unemployment rates in the country. Events over the weekend that followed, disturbance erupted into full-scale rioting, with pitched battles between police and youths in which petrol bombs and paving stones were thrown. During the violence, milk floats were set on fire and directed at police lines. Rioters were also observed using scaffolding poles to charge police lines. The Merseyside police had issued its officers with long protective shields, but these proved inadequate in protecting officers from missile attacks, and in particular the effects of petrol bombs. The overwhelming majority of officers were not trained either in using the shields or in public order tactics. The sole offensive tactic available to officers, the baton charge, proved increasingly ineffective in driving back the attacking crowds of rioters. At 2:15 hours on Monday, 6 July, Merseyside police officers fired between 2.5-3 CS gas grenades for the first time in the UK outside Northern Ireland. The gas succeeded in dispersing the crowds. In all, the rioting lasted 9 days, during which 468 police officers were injured, 500 people were arrested, and at least 70 buildings were damaged so severely by fire that they had to be demolished. Around 100 cars were destroyed, and there was extensive looting of shops. Later estimates suggested the numbers of injured police officers and destroyed buildings were at least double those of the official figures. Such was the scale of the rioting in Toxteth that police reinforcements were drafted in from forces across England, including Greater Manchester Police, Lancashire, Cumbria, Birmingham and even Devon, to try to control the unrest. A second wave of rioting began on the 27th of July 1981 and continued into the early hours of the 28th of July, with police once again being attacked with missiles and a number of cars being set alight. 26 officers were injured. However, on this occasion the Merseyside police responded by driving vans and Land Rovers at high speed into the crowds, quickly dispersing them. This tactic had been developed as a riot control technique in Northern Ireland by the Royal Ulster Constabulary and had been employed with success in quelling the Moss Side riots by the Greater Manchester Police. A local man, David Moore, died after being struck by a police vehicle trying to clear crowds, because it was seen to involve mainly black youths. The Toxteth upheaval was generally reported as a race riot, but there were also reports of frustrated white youths travelling in from other areas of Liverpool to fight alongside Toxteth residents against the police. One facility looted in the riots was a sports club called the Racket Club, which was open opened in 1877 on Upper Parliament Street. When Toxteth was an upper-middle-class area, the area's character had changed over the years and it had declined as wealthier residents moved to newer areas and the older houses were bought by residents on lower incomes or by landlords who rented them out to tenants. When the riot started, the clubhouse included 3 squash courts and 12 bedrooms. During the riot, on the morning of the 6th of July 1981, the clubhouse and all of its facilities and records was burnt and destroyed, and it did not reopen until the 20th of May 1985 in another building. Dozens of senior citizens were evacuated from the Prince's Park Hospital during the riots' aftermath. The subsequent Scarman report recognized that the riots did represent the result of social problems, such as poverty and deprivation. The government responded by sending Michael Heseltine, as Minister for Merseyside, to set up the Merseyside Task Force and launch a series of initiatives, including the Liverpool International Garden Festival and the Mersey Basin Campaign. 1985 riots. The 21st of August 1985, 50 youths attack cops with spikes torn from railings and bricks in Toxteth in the early hours. Roof of a patrol car is pierced. This is a relatively common occurrence in Toxteth, but since '81, all mini-riots not connected with the miners' strike have been subject to a press blackout. Talking of such things in the media becomes a way of making them seem a lot less common than they are, making spectators think that when the media doesn't mention such things are clearly not happening. The 1st of October 1985, 10 people were injured in a second riot in Toxteth on the 1st of October 1985, after gangs stormed the district streets and stoned and burnt cars in response to the arrest of 4 local black men in connection with a stabbing. The Merseyside Police Operational Support Division was deployed into the area to restore order and were later criticized by community leaders and the Roman Catholic Archbishop of Liverpool, Derek Warlock, for their overzealous and provocative tactics, which included the drumming of batons on riot shields. Toxteth riots in popular culture. The riots feature prominently in Liverpool native Kevin Sampson's novel Stars Are Stars. The book's protagonist helps the rioters, protesters, by taking photographs of police brutality before and during the riots. Rapper Braintax mentions the Toxteth riots in his song opening titles. "I've been rapping since the Toxteth riots, so you New Jack American wannabes need to stay quiet." The riots took place whilst the special song Ghost Town was topping the UK singles chart. The song had been written in response to the earlier, though less serious, riots in Coventry, and was released at a time when unrest had broken out in several parts of London and the rest of England. 2 songs by local bands responded to the uprising of 1981 shortly after the event. Public Disgrace's Hardcore Punk 45, Toxteth, and Cooked Books 12 single Piggy in the Middle 8, with lyrics by John Smith and its haunting dub side, Gone to Black, with reggae producer Dennis Bovell at the controls, including many theme tunes from TV Cop series. Both records were issued on Liverpool's Probe Plus label. Local band The Rialto Burns named themselves after the Liverpool Echo headline, which featured the Rialto Ballroom burning satellite during the riots. The venue, which had played host to the Beatles, was eventually razed to the ground. In Series 8, Episode 7 of Shameless, Mimi Maguire mentions the Toxteth riots several times. In Season 6, Episode 3 of Crossing Jordan, mentioned that his father owned a shop on Selborne Road during the riots, and that he and his father were stuck in the middle of the violence. When he and his father returned to the shop, it had been burned down. Footballer Robbie Fowler refers to the riots in his autobiography, Billy Bold. By New Zealand musician Graham Brazier refers to the riots. The music video featuring news excerpts from the riots